Yo, welcome back, everybody. What is going on? Bloomburrow. Almost over. It's only been like 2 months. Feels like that's kind of the set interval at this point. Just 2 months and a new set. Duskmourn coming out really soon. Pre-release in about 2 weeks time from this video's release. Gonna be on Arena on the 24th. Of course, that means that this channel is gonna be revving up to get you all the best content we possibly can to get you prepared for your pre-release and your drafts and all that stuff. Monday the 16th, I'm gonna be streaming my full set review on Twitch, posting it here to the YouTube channel shortly after. But in the meantime, for something to whet your appetite a bit, enough of the set is out that I thought I'd just hop on just for a quick video, talk about what I think is going on at a high level on this set, some things that have caught my eye from what's been previewed so far, first impressions, and honestly, I just want to talk about the new cards. The set seems pretty cool to me. I'm not somebody who generally cares that much about the set's themes, but Innistrad is one of my favorite planes. I like the flavor of those kind of horror-centric sets. I do tend to like when Magic dips a little more into the darker themes. So yeah, let's just dive in and talk about some cards. Okay, so let's talk big picture. What's going on here? What are the themes? What are the mechanics? Not exactly to go archetype by archetype, all 10 color pairs or anything today, but just a bird's eye view of what's going on here, what kind of mechanics you're going to see. I think this set is, in a weird way, sort of like a mix of Theros and Innistrad, because the two main things that they have you caring about in this set are enchantments and the graveyard. So for the enchantment side of things, we've got a new-ish mechanic, Eerie, and Eerie is on creatures generally. Here's an example. Scrabbling Skullcrab is a single blue mana for an 0/3 crab skeleton at uncommon, and it has Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, target player mills 2 cards. And we're gonna get to the room thing in a second if you haven't seen what rooms are. But basically, this is like Constellation from Theros. Whenever an enchantment enters, you do a thing. It seems that they have upped the number of enchantment-based removal spells in this set. There are also enchantment creatures that will trigger this. So again, sort of just like Theros, a lot of the kind of same design tricks that they've had to make sure you can get, 9, 10 enchantments in your deck, something that you normally don't see in a limited set, but creatures being enchantments in the set, a lot of them, that plays a big part here. And then, yeah, the rooms. So if you haven't seen these before, these are enchantments, but they're split cards. Like enchantment split cards, kind of an interesting concept. Basically what they say is you can cast either side of them. So for example, here we've got Glassworks on one side, Shattered Yard on the other. You can choose to cast either of them first. And then when it's on the battlefield, you can then pay the other side's cost to unlock it, which means that the enchantment just gets both effects. So sometimes you're going to have one side be an enter the battlefield effect, like we have on Glassworks, and the other side, Shattered Yard, be more passive. Some of them are both sides passive effects. Another example here, just thought I'd show another example because it's a new kind of card type, Bottomless Pit and Locker Room. Bottomless Pit being a bounce spell, Locker Room being kind of a Biden of Thassa, Coastal Piracy variant. And so the idea with these, of course, and the Eerie mechanic is the rooms give you 2 triggers for Eerie. One when you cast the enchantment the first time, the enchantment enters, and the second time when you unlock the second door. And also one thing, kind of hard to see, you might have not noticed, but this Glassworks Shatter Yard card, this is a common. This kind of seems like a mechanic that you'd see on like a cycle of rares and maybe a few uncommons here and there, but this is a mechanic, like these rooms are seeded throughout the set. Blue-red is actually the room deck. You care about unlocking doors and rooms and casting enchantments. You have the Eerie crossover there too. So yeah, just some kind of interesting space they're playing in. And then the graveyard side of things, Delirium is back. And we last saw Delirium in Shadows over Innistrad. A returning mechanic, but if you've never played with Delirium before, Delirium is on, a bunch of different card types. It's on creatures. It can be on instant or sorceries. It can even, be on enchantments, be on artifacts. I think we've only seen it on creatures and instant and sorcery so far, but what it wants you to do is get to 4 different card types in your graveyard. So fill up your graveyard enough and play enough varied card types in your deck in general, and then you get a bonus. Your creature gets a little bit better, your spell gets a little bit better. For example, Patchwork Beastie here, we've got a 1 mana 3/3, but it can't attack or block until you've got Delirium. It also helps to get to Delirium too, because you can mill a card on your upkeep. When you're playing with Delirium and you're deck building with Delirium, you really want to make sure that you can get to 4 different card types relatively easily. And what happens with Delirium is that creature, that's an easy one. Your creatures are going to go to your graveyards. Instants and sorceries, those also go to the graveyard pretty easily. But then the 4th one is sometimes pretty tricky to get in the graveyard because lands don't really go to the graveyard that easily. There is a Terramorphic Expanse in this set, which is just, Evolving Wilds basically. So a land that goes to your graveyard. So I do imagine that Terramorphic Expanse is going to be a reasonably high pick for decks that are trying to enable Delirium. But then enchantment and artifact, those ones are hard, But enchantment, of course, is not that hard in this set. We've got enchantment creatures. Cards with 2 card types are always good. Enchantment creatures, artifact creatures, because those count for 2, of course, when you're trying to get to your 4 for your delirium count. Self-mill, of course, is very good with delirium, so you can get those lands and those artifacts, and, you know, there's harder to get card types into your graveyard that maybe sometimes don't make their way to your graveyard naturally. Got a nice little example here, actually. Fear of Burning Alive. So this is a enchantment creature that also has delirium. It's a 6-mana 4/4. Then when it enters the battlefield, it deals 4 damage to each opponent, but if you've got delirium, it has this static ability that says whenever a source deals non-combat damage to an opponent, if you've got delirium, Fear of Burning Alive, it deals that much damage to target creature that player controls. So if you've got delirium, this thing delves 4 to the opponent's face and kills a creature. This one's a pretty nice one. And then with delirium being a central theme for the set, there's a few other ways they have you playing with your graveyard. We've got black-white being a reanimator deck, apparently. A few solid reanimation spells already been spoiled, and not a ton of reanimation targets just yet, but here is one of them, and another one I'm going to point out in a second. So Vile Mutilator is a 7-mana 6/5 flying trample. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Hopefully you don't have to do that. Hopefully you are reanimating this. And it says when it enters, each opponent sacrifices a non-token enchantment and sacrifices a non-token creature. So pretty good into the battlefield effect. Really good if you can reanimate this on turn 5 or something. And then another pretty good reanimator target that also has its own thing going on here is Ultinac, the Thrice Called. This is a 7-mana 9/9 trample, so really large. And it says whenever it becomes the target of a spell or ability and opponent controls, you draw a card. Also has an ability that lets it discard itself, which is of course good for reanimation. 2 mana, discard it, return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. And I think generally, you know, we've kind of seen some of these kind of cards before, big things that you can discard to go get a land generally from your deck. I think this card's a little bit worse. That ability is a little bit worse than just going to get a land from your deck. It's not like it fixes you, but sometimes this is going to be better. It's actually going to ramp you. It's actually going to put it on the battlefield. Like I mentioned, there is Terramorphic Expanse, a land that puts itself in the graveyard. And then it's also a Beetlejuice reference with the card Say Its Name. Kind of cool. 1 and a green for a sorcery at common. Mill 3 cards, then you can return a creature or land from your graveyard to your hand. So this is a card that Delirium decks are just going to want, right? A sorcery that puts stuff in the graveyard, quite good. But then you can also exile this card and 2 other copies of it to bring this giant monster onto the battlefield. So yeah, just like a nice little minigame, something that's going to come together once in a while. 2 cards I think you're just going to be fine putting in your deck. And of course, like I mentioned, if you are able to reanimate your Ultinac early, that's going to be pretty sweet. 2 more mechanics I want to touch on. One is the survival mechanic. This is one of your aggro-focused mechanics of the set. So the survival says if this creature is tapped during your second main phase, you get something. So an example here is Veteran Survivor. 1 mana for a 2/1 human. And it says at the beginning of your second main phase, if the survivor is tapped, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. And that's just going to be good in a graveyard-centric set with Delirium. You know, keep your opponent off their kind of more rare card types. Also says if there are 3 or more cards exiled with a Veteran Survivor, it gets +3/+3 and has hexproof. So of course, you know, the idea is get in, use combat tricks to keep these alive, but also there's a few cards that just help you tap down your own creatures. Like there's a 5-mana 4/4 enchantment creature that comes in and taps a creature. If it's one of your opponent's creatures, you put a stun counter on it, and if it's one of your creatures, you don't. You just, you know, tap your creature, get the survival bonus. So yeah, one of the kind of more minor mechanics, and then one final mechanic to talk about is Manifest Dread. So Unsettling Twins is a good example here. Is 4 mana for a 2/2, and when it enters, you Manifest Dread. And to Manifest Dread, you look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 onto the battlefield face down as a 2/2 creature, the other one into the graveyard, and then you can turn up that card if it's a creature for its mana cost at any time. So kind of like Morph, like Disguise. This is literally just Manifest from Khans of Tarkir block, but with Manifest Dread, means you look at the top 2, get a little more selection, which I think is actually a really nice upgrade on what this mechanic was before. I think that little tweak is really nice because a lot of times you kind of just hit lands or hit instant or sorceries with your Manifest, and you really do want to hit a creature that turns up into something bigger later. It's not as fun of a game where you're just like, all right, well, my cool spell is just sitting here and I can't do anything with it. That selection of actually hitting a creature a little more often is nice. Plus, another mechanic that gets things in the graveyard. So I think they really intertwine the mechanics in the set really, really well with being able to enable the graveyard, enchantments being good for Delirium. Another example of just some nice overlap here, Tunnel Surveyor. This is 3 mana for a 2/2. When it enters, you make a 1/1 white Glimmer enchantment creature token. So it's a creature that makes an enchantment token. By the way, both these cards, Unsettling Twins and Tunnel Surveyor, I expect to be very, very good. Just your common classic make some bodies kind of creatures that have abilities, additional upsides, reasons you want to play them. Two more things to touch on quickly. Number one, there are going to be 2 signpost uncommons for each of the archetypes. So 20 signpost uncommons overall, 2 for each. I always like when they do this. They're going to do this a little more often, they've said, with play boosters. It's something that I feel just helps grease the wheels a little bit for limited, and I think it's very true. It always feels very nice when you get rewarded for being in the open lane. You get multiple gold payoffs, not just one. And then we have lands. We have dual lands, not quite a common. They're in that land slot, so some percentage of packs are going to have these lands in the land slot over a basic land. I'm not sure the exact percentage. I want to say it's like 40-ish%, but don't quote me on that. And they're kind of cool. They're not too much more than just enter the battlefield tapped, adds 1 of 2 colors lands, but they do have this cool little upside of they enter untapped if a player has 13 or less life. I don't think this is actually going to be all that relevant, but it is nice that in the mid to late game, when you go, okay, just need a land, just need a land, just need a land, it's gotta draw that little 1 land so I can cast my 5-drop, and you draw your, dual land, your tap land, it's not going to be actually tapped some amount of the time, so it's going to come up once in a while, but I think you should generally just look at these as just fixing enter the battlefield tap lands. Yeah, and that's all I got for today. Again, just wanted to go over some things quickly. Hope you enjoyed. Like I said, there's going to be a bunch of content coming soon, so if you're not already subscribed, do subscribe. Really helps the channel. Like, comment, all that stuff. And let me know what you're excited for. Let me know if there's anything that I didn't touch on that you thought was kind of cool. Maybe something you'd like to hear me go more in depth on a future video. And yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoy the content coming your way soon. Bye, everybody.